welcome back to 30 at 6 on Cecil TV. I'm Allison Donnelly.
And I'm Rob Churnside. It's after Labor Day, Allison.
Yes.
And
back to school.
For some unlucky lucky kids.
Oh, I have such nostalgia for going back to school.
Well, it's a big deal for a lot of kids. I mean, 3 months off,
Right.
maybe not one book for the entire 3 months.
I
Hope not.
Yeah, and so the Department of Emergency Services shared some good back-to-school safety tips that we're going to talk about. One of them is for other drivers who, when they're behind a school bus and they see the red flashing lights and the stop sign, make sure you stop and wait until the bus is done flashing and all of the kids are in the bus safely, and then you can drive. I know it's a big problem.
That makes a lot of sense.
But also, there's another one that makes a lot of sense to have, like a family emergency plan. So just in case something ever happens, to make sure your kids know your contact information and a good central location for where you can all meet, and a first aid kit never hurts.
Yeah, and at some kids at a certain age, they're the first ones home in the evening because mom and dad may be both working.
Right.
So it's important to have that.
Yep, very true.
Especially with hurricanes. Seem to come down the pike.
Yeah. Hurricane season doesn't end in the summer. We have a couple more months of it.
We'll see.
Yeah. And now for the news. As of this past Thursday, Cecil County Public Schools accomplished the goal it set 2 years ago to have all schools and offices fully ALICE trained before the start of the 2018-2019 school year. ALICE is an acronym that stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate, and it is a best practice framework for active shooter response. Kids in Cecil County go back to school this week. All students have a new superintendent this year, Dr. Jeffrey Lawson, who took over the position after Dr. Diette Devine's retirement in June. And students at Northeast and Elkton High Schools, as well as Bayview Elementary and Northeast Middle School, will be greeted by new principals. We look forward to reporting the latest news at the schools to you this year. So stay tuned. You can still get tickets for the Crab Crawl in downtown Northeast this coming Saturday, September 8th. Tickets are $45 each, and all proceeds benefit the Cecil County Public Library's Summer Reading and Learning Program. Stroll along the half-mile loop and sample crabby dishes from your favorite spots: Unwind, Porthouse Grill, Pier 1 Restaurant, Bella Pizza, and Woody's Crab House. Beginning this Saturday and continuing every Saturday in September, Freedom Hills Therapeutic Riding will host a meet and greet the ponies event. For more information, visit www.freedomhills.org. We'll be back after these messages.
You're watching Cecil TV.
I'm home! Wow, it's hot in here.
Grandma says call the Moon Man.
Moon Man, the AC is out and my family is melted!
At your service! There you go! Mission accomplished!
Thanks, Moon Man!
The house is nice and cool again. Moon Man, you're awesome. You're welcome! Just go to moonair8.com. For out of this world service, moonair8.com.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sam Charles. For 30 years, I have been practicing functional medicine and gentle chiropractic. Elkton Chiropractic Neurology is dedicated to enhancing whole-body rejuvenation, whether or not you are afflicted with injury or disease. We utilize a structural, neurologic, metabolic, nutritional, and energetic approach to restoring your body to its full potential.
After coming to Dr. Charles, I'm better than I was before.
You deserve to feel good and to have an active lifestyle, so why not call Elkton Chiropractic Neurology today?
Welcome back to 30 at 6 on Cecil TV. Last year, Bob Bashore introduced us to a group called No Labels. It's a national political organization that promotes leadership that pushes back against extreme factions in our political climate, and also encourages leadership that will come to the center when it's the best decision for the American people. Bob, thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Thank you, Allison.
So it was a year ago that you first came to talk to us about No Labels. What have you guys been up to?
Well, there's been a lot behind the scenes. It's a growing organization. It's grassroots. We are in all 50 states. We have leaders in all states. We have leaders in Maryland. We have leaders in every district in Maryland. You don't hear a lot about no labels on the news. You kind of have to look for it.
Right.
It's a little bit under the radar.
It's not scandalous enough.
No, well, that's very true. When you're centrist, you're not as controversial, so you might not get as much airplay.
Right.
And that's part of what we're trying to work on. So we're very active, but as I said, a lot of it's behind the scenes, and that's where a lot of the exciting stuff is happening right now.
Right.
And your viewers, when we're through, they'll hear a couple things that they might be privy to that they're going to see come to fruition, say, after the midterms. That's very exciting stuff.
Right. Tell us about the Problem Solvers Caucus.
Well, the Problem Solvers Caucus is a group of Congress people in the House that was inspired by no labels. This is one of those behind the scenes things that there's a lot of. Our national headquarters is in DC, where all the action is. We have relationships with most legislators. They're all aware of us now. A couple years ago, I might not have been able to say that.
Right.
And we're becoming more and more of a factor, and people are paying more attention, again, more behind the scenes. So what happened is about a couple of years ago, Problem Solvers started as a group of bipartisan legislators, Republican, Democrat, and Independent. So it's truly bipartisan. And what has happened is, in the last year that's exciting, is this group has really found its own. It's coming up, it's grown since last year, all the way up to 48 members of this caucus. It's a caucus, similar to Freedom Caucus and the Black Caucus and so forth. So, but what's wonderful about this is it's bipartisan. So 48 members is a powerful block in Congress if it's used correctly, if it is in the right situation. So what they've been doing with all the craziness in Washington and all, there's still the gridlock, there's still the shouting and the lack of civility and the extreme partisanship. I think it's energized them even more. Now, since we've had all the debacles with health care, immigration, infrastructure, things that just aren't getting done, gun safety, they've come up and crafted very high quality bipartisan legislation that they would vote on as a bloc. And this would truly be solutions for the majority of Americans. And it is a solution from the majority of legislators. And that's where we are now.
So tell us about the procedural barriers that the problem solvers have encountered and what they're trying to solve through the Break the Gridlock.
Great question. That is where we are. That's why they're more energized, because this is a quality group of people who are, fighting against the current. They don't get the airplay because it's not as interesting to the Foxes and the CNNs and so forth. But they are more and more if you watch. But they're frustrated now because they've crafted this wonderful legislation, and they're not able to even get it to the floor.
And why is that?
Well, you have rules in Congress, committee rules, closure rules, these sort of things that the party in control, whether it's Democrats or Republicans, especially in the last 10 years, they tend to block legislation that their party does not want to have a vote on, which means it stays partisan and wonderful ideas never come to the surface, never get discussed, not even discussed in committee. So that's the problem. The rules in Congress at the highest levels, going up to the Speaker, have developed in a bad way. So the Speaker has too much power and is too controlled by his extreme wings of the party. No Labels started what we call the Speaker's Project in-house, and eventually, as they inspired the problem solvers. They inspired the problem solvers to come up with their own program called Break the Gridlock,
Right.
which is a very cool, interesting, powerful, bold attempt to change things in Washington. So I'm hoping your viewers will take a look at this. This truly is one of the major things that could make some fascinating changes and break this trend.
Why is this important for people who are far removed from the goings-on in the Capitol building? Why is this important for people, for our viewers here in Cecil County?
Well, because, we're all U.S. citizens. We all have our own legislators local, and we're all in District 1.
Yep.
Currently, Andy Harris is our representative. We have midterms happening now. We have Jesse Colvin now, who's been nominated on the Democratic side.
Right.
So we're all interested in that. If you have any interest at all in politics and policy and things that affect your family, your children, the future of the country. And really, the popularity of Congress, I think is it in the teens?
I think so.
I think it's something like that, which to me says about 80% of the population doesn't like what Congress is doing. So folks in Cecil County, if you're in that category, pay attention, and you can make a difference by wanting this from your legislator.
And how can our viewers learn more?
Well, you can always go to nolabels.org, and there's a ton of information about our organization. You can join. It costs almost nothing. You get a wealth of information. I suggest you go Google Break the Gridlock,
Okay.
which is the group of legislatures program. It's 10 proposals to actually make these changes, and it will limit the power of the speaker to control so much so that great quality legislation cannot even come to the surface.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Of course.
The Union Hospital Cancer Patients Food Pantry fundraiser blew into Lee's Landing and Port Deposit like a hurricane on last Wednesday. The New Orleans sounds of Bonarama and local favorite, the Billy Pierce Band, kept the 200-plus concertgoers rocking and rolling throughout the event. Money was raised and food donations were collected. Here's what Billy Pierce had to say about the fundraiser. Billy, how do you think things went tonight?
I think they went very well. Kelly told me that we may have made just a little bit of extra money so that we can give it to the Union Hospital cancer thing, and I know we got a carload of food to deliver to the food locker for the cancer patients down there.
Both Billy and Union's organizer, Kelly Tone, are already planning for next year. Don't miss it. And now it's history time with Cecil County's own historian, Mike Dixon. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks for having me, Rob.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. We were talking earlier about Labor Day and the origins of Labor Day, and you knew all about that. And we'll have to talk about that some other time. You want to talk about murder and stuff like that tonight, right?
Well, shall we?
Yes.
That sounds good to me. Well, you know, Rob, there's a program coming up here at the library system this fall. It starts with Maryland Humanities. Maryland Humanities has this program called One Maryland, One Book, and across the state, everybody reads the same book. Now this year they're reading a title called Bloodsworth, the story of the first death row inmate that was exonerated by DNA. So they'll read that, there'll be discussions, but my involvement is that on September 18th, they've asked that I do a little talk on how we investigated old crimes before we had modern science and forensics and DNA. So we'll do that on September 18th at 7 p.m. at the Perryville Library.
Perryville Branch.
Perryville Branch,
Right.
and it's called Cold Cases, Cecil County.
Wow. Sounds kind of chilling.
Well,
This Bloodsworth guy.
Yeah.
Kirk Bloodsworth, right?
Yep.
He was convicted before DNA evidence.
Right, yeah, it was a result of a young girl that was murdered in 1984. He always said he was innocent, went before trial, he was convicted. And 1984, of course, we didn't have DNA. DNA comes along, he's now a free man. And what I'll talk about with this, though, is how in Cecil County we investigated crimes in days before there was any modern idea of professionalization, no idea of crime scene science or anything like that.
The magnifying glass. Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of these crimes that you're going to be talking about?
Well, a couple of things that you have to remember about this. So just think of 19th century or even the first decades of the 20th century. There was a sheriff in Elkton. There was a deputy or two. And then you had county constables all around the county. They were probably farmers, postmasters, merchants, clerks, but they weren't full-time policemen. And then that was it. There were no state police. Most of the time it would be a barroom fight, serve a warrant, evict somebody from a house. But every once in a while, for instance, outside of Rising Sun, on a cold April night in 1891, in the early morning hours, under a deep darkness, someone broke into a house right across from Spready Oak, the little restaurant there. As the family was slumbering peacefully, somebody broke in the house. The wife woke up Rob. The family's name, the husband's name was J. Granville Richards. But Jenny, his wife, wakes him up and says, "There's somebody in the house." This is 1891, April of 1891. He reaches for a gun, and as he sets up, she's setting up, there's somebody in the room. A shot will go off. Mrs. Richards falls back into the bed. Mr. Richards goes out into the hallway to see what's going on. There's a full family in the house, children, in-laws, and things like that. He thought one of the sons was coming out of the bedroom. He gets in a tussle with some unknown person. There's no light, no electricity.
Right.
At best, you get a flickering lantern or a kerosene lamp. They tumble down to the steps. He's shot, and the burglars, in the meantime, the entire household's awake. The young boys, they're teenagers, come out. He yells for them to go get help from the neighbors. Well, that's down the road. We're in rural Cecil County in the 1890s. Sure. They'll summons help, and they'll also get a doctor there. She will never regain consciousness. And today she's buried at West Nottingham Presbyterian Cemetery. The call for the law, for the criminal justice system, law enforcement, the sheriff will arrive from Elkton. Well, think of Elkton in 1891. Horseback, or catch the trains and make your way down to Perryville, up through Port Deposit into Rising Sun. Right? It was dawn the next day before the sheriff arrived there. They will immediately set out to find the perpetrators. And I will tell you, 127 years later, whoever did it went to their grave, never have been convicted, never having justice served for that murder. So we'll talk about that in a little more detail.
And other cold cases as well.
Okay. Well, there are plenty, and we'll talk about, and we'll actually talk about how, for instance, like how law enforcement begins to professionalize. But here's a well-known one in the annals of crime in Cecil County. On August 18th, 1904, Judge Constable, judge in the circuit court, decided to go for his evening stroll out of Fair Hill. And there he was waylaid by a highwayman, a perpetrator, a wayward type, and they robbed him and shot him. A neighbor nearby will hear the shot. It's out at Far Creek going up the hill there. And he comes, an elderly man, well, not so elderly, but a gentleman comes to his aid. And before the judge succumbs, he says, "Who did this to you?" He says, "I don't know. It was a young white guy." Well, this gentleman happened to be an African American. The police will show up on the scene. They can't find a primary suspect, so the African American gentleman's incarcerated and is going to be charged for committing the crime. Well, it looks like he's going to go before the grand jury and stand trial in the circuit court. But a few months later, they get a report from the Philadelphia police that a young white guy is trying to sell a pocket watch at a pawn shop. Of course, they asked the Philadelphia police. That freed this gentleman. Mr. Holland was his name. So we'll talk a little bit about how the police were coming to their conclusions and how that investigation worked. But essentially the way it worked in those days, if you didn't have a smoking gun, or somebody ready to confess, you just rounded up everybody who looked like they might have been a perpetrator, and you brought them in. But Philadelphia police were aware of the crime, and here's this guy trying to pawn a pocket watch. Solved the case for him. By the way, this young guy's name who committed the crime was John Simpers. He was 23 years old.
Wow.
On a day in October 1905, he sits from the old jail on North Street. It's now the Elkton apartment buildings. And he looks out each day as they're building the gallows. And he knows that in 2 or 3 days, after Mr. Merritt finishes those gallows, that he'll send that platform and a rope will go around his neck and he'll breathe his last. That was not a cold case. They solved that one.
No, and he didn't hang around much longer after that, did he?
No, he didn't.
Well, Mike, we always enjoy when you hang around with us here at 30 at 6.
Well,
and I'm looking forward to the 18th, Perryville Library Branch.
See you there, right? I'm going to see you there, right?
Cecil TV will be there.
Oh, great. Thanks, Rob. Thank you so much. Bye.
Hi, I'm Dr. Sam Charles. For 30 years, I have been practicing functional medicine and gentle chiropractic. Elkton Chiropractic Neurology is dedicated to enhancing whole body rejuvenation, whether or not you are afflicted with injury or disease. We utilize a structural, neurologic, metabolic, nutritional, and energetic approach to restoring your body to its full potential.
After coming to Dr. Charles, I'm better than I was before.
You deserve to feel good and to have an active lifestyle, so why not call Elkton Chiropractic Neurology today?
I'm home. Wow, it's hot in here.
Grandma says call the Moon Man.
Moon Man, the AC is out and my family is melted.
At your service. There you go. Mission accomplished.
Thanks, Moon Man.
The house is nice and cool again. Moon Man, you're awesome. You're welcome. Just go to moonair8.com. For out of this world service, moonair8.com.
And now Cecil County in the world. Our most frequent musical guest, the one and only child prodigy, mountain old-time music aficionado, and bon vivant and man of the world, Del Lord. Welcome.
Hi, how you doing, Rob?
I'm doing great, Del.
Oh, that's great.
30 at 6. Yeah. So you're going to share a couple new songs with us.
Yes.
And one of them was inspired from your move from Rising Sun to Northeast. Let's talk about how you moved from Rising Sun to Northeast.
By car.
Well, yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for sharing, Del. So, okay, you got me there. So you took and uprooted from Rising Sun after you wrote a Rising Sun song, right?
Yeah. Actually, I didn't really write it. I rearranged it and made the music for it and all that stuff. It's called, of course, the Rising Sun song, and they really liked it. As a matter of fact, it's under, they have a copy of it under glass in the Rising Sun Historical Museum.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Now, Northeast, you also wrote a song about Northeast.
Yes, I did. Yep. And I wrote this, what is it?
I have it right here before me. August the 30th.
August the 30th of this year, 2018. Yeah, I just wrote that one. And then another one under that I wrote, it's called In This Crazy World, and I just did that yesterday, September the 2nd, 2018.
Hot off the press.
Yes.
We're looking forward to hearing these songs. A little bit about Northeast.
Yes.
There's things to do and things to see. What do you like about Northeast?
It's a very beautiful location. You know, you have the Chesapeake right there and the park's right there. You see a lot of fishermen there, a lot of boats. There's stores all up and down Main Street, and it's just a very heavenly, beautiful location.
Yes, it is. And earlier we were talking about one of your favorite things. Don't you go, isn't there somewhere you can hear bluegrass music in Northeast?
Yes, the VFW, Northeast VFW, on Sundays from 4 until 8 o'clock. They have live bluegrass music, bands, and I've been there and listened to the different bands, and it's really great.
I think a Cecil TV trip ought to be marked on the calendar. We ought to go check that out.
Yeah, oh, that would be wonderful.
We'll let you know. We can all gather there.
Oh, that would be great, Rob.
That's great. I'm glad you like Northeast, your new town, and we're looking forward to hearing your music, Del.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Howdy, friends and neighbors. This is Del Lord, the old hedgehog, here on September the 3rd, 2018. Here is a very serious song that I wrote yesterday, and I entitled it, In This Crazy World. In this crazy world, things are out of whack. I wonder where they'll all end up at. What should be love is now considered wrong. Many people hurt all day long. You'll be blessed if you do, and wrong if you don't. Listen to the news, the story goes on. Let's all get together and stop the hate right now. We're all great people, and people always count. Be blessed if you do, and wrong if you don't. Just listen to the news, the story goes on. Let's all get together and stop the hate right now. We're all